Hello, listener, and welcome to this preview of our latest Patreon-exclusive episode. To continue the conversation and listen to the full episode, head over to the Beyond the Screenplay Patreon. The link is in the show notes. Hi, I'm Michael. Welcome to Beyond the Screenplay. Wait, this is patrons. Hey, patrons, what's up? All right, so we're going to talk about... we're here in week 8 of our sequel summer. I'm joined by the Beyond the Screenplay team, of course, Trisha Arand.
Hello, everyone.
Brian Bittner.
Hello, hello.
And Alex Calleros.
Hello.
And we're talking about Alien 3, which I'm excited about. Okay, so we're talking about Alien 3, written by David Giler, Walter Hill, Larry Ferguson, directed by David Fincher. And let's talk about this movie and our first experiences with it. So Alien franchise. We've talked about several of the Alien movies now. Almost all, but not. We haven't talked about Resurrections. We haven't talked about that other one
Covenant.
That wasn't the Covenant, yeah, which was kind of great in its own way. So I love Alien. Lots of other people love Aliens, and Alien 3 is just this kind of weird. I don't know what this movie is. Like, whether you're coming at it from Alien or Aliens, I don't know that this is like a sequel that anyone was expecting. Certainly not me. But I don't dislike this movie when it's on. But I'm also not like, this is good. And I feel like every time I've watched it, I go on a similar journey of, I know this is supposed to be bad. I'm kind of into it. Now I'm kind of neutral. Now they killed Tywin Lannister. And now a movie is going to keep happening for an hour. And I'm not as into it. There's lots of... the story around the making of this movie, it was, a very troubled production process. I've seen the documentary. I don't remember a lot, but I remember it being fascinating. All of the Alien box set that came out has so many amazing behind the scenes features, and I remember loving them, but it's just been like 10 years since I watched them all. But it being really fascinating, and me also just being invested with like being a David Fincher fan, seeing the first David Fincher film, hearing what a disaster it was. So there's, I guess what I'm getting at is like, I don't know what this movie is as a movie. There's so many things around it as a movie that it's hard for me to just watch the movie without thinking about all this other weird context. And so I'm kind of excited to hear from you guys what you make of it, because ultimately when it comes on and I watch it, I'm extremely neutral about it. And I feel like I should either like it more or hate it more based on what it is. And I'm just kind of super neutral. So that's kind of me. Brian, what's your relationship with this movie?
My relationship with the Alien franchise, maybe I mentioned it in one of our early episodes about this franchise, but it was like I had someone on my floor my freshman year of college would like put on Alien Resurrection, the like flamethrower scene where she meets all of her failed clones, and then they're like, kill me. And then like we'd watch that, and then we'd watch like the movie and stuff. And then eventually I did my due diligence and I was like, I'm going to watch this whole franchise. So for me, this franchise is just like this quadrilogy is just kind of like one mishmash of movies. Not anymore, but at the time it was just like I was watching them all. I would always watch them like all at once. And then of course over time Alien is a very different movie from Aliens, and appreciating that. And because I then bought the quadrilogy, I could like watch the Aliens director's cut and kind of appreciate like, oh, that's what this movie is. And then over here is like this Ridley Scott thing that's very different. Then I would like discover Blade Runner and stuff and be like, oh yeah, that's what this Ridley Scott thing is over here. And then of course, this is my college years. So now I'm discovering Fincher. So then it's like, oh yeah, there's like Fincher shots going on here. I'm starting to see like Fincher is starting to be Fincher here. And then the other thing I always did was, I don't know when the last time I saw the theatrical cut of Alien 3 is, because I would just watch the assembly cut whenever I would watch this movie. Because of course, as we've learned with Aliens, like what does the studio cut out? Character, theme, like the things that are interesting. And what's not good in this movie? All the alien stuff, like all the xenomorph stuff. Like it's not interesting story-wise. It looks awful, But to your point, Michael, I will say that I do like this movie. I don't think it is good, and there are a lot of problems that we will get into. But especially knowing the assembly cut really well, I feel like there is a lot of textural stuff here. There's a lot of like story world stuff I really like. There are some cool character, like both the Chuck D's are like great characters in this and like give great performances. And Sigourney with a shaved head, I'm just like, there's a lot here. I also mentioned my vibe thing. I always use Seven and Blade Runner as my two examples of movies that I just feel like I can feel them through the screen. So Fincher making a Ridley Scott movie, essentially, like no surprise there that I would really like something about about just the vibes and the mood and the texture of this. And yeah, so we'll get into everything, but I feel like there's a lot here that works well. There's a lot here that doesn't. And unfortunately, what doesn't work well is in the second half for the most part. So then it's like, the assembly cut ride is way better because Act 2B is actually coherent at all and not just like, here's 5 new ideas that are all happening all at once. But it's hard by the end of it not to kind of feel sort of disillusioned, But to your point, Michael, there are definitely times where I'm like in the middle of watching this movie and like I've been like, this has been great for 15 minutes, Like if I could just hang on to this feeling, I would have a really good time. So yeah, I like this movie. And agree with everything we're going to say about
it. Nice. Yeah. All right, cool. Trisha, what about you?
So I thought that I had seen this movie. I was wrong. I had not seen this movie at
Fascinating.
all prior to a couple of days ago. So I am brand new. And I watched the theatrical cut and I was like, this is supposed to be bad. I'm all braced for it. Oh God, it's going to be a bad alien movie. You know what? I liked it. I liked it a lot. And I know it's like, it has a ton of problems. There was a minute in the second act, deep in the second act, where I was like, wait, what? Like it cut to a new scene and I was like, hang on, who? Where are we? What are we doing? I don't know any of these characters. I don't know where they are, why they're doing any of what they're doing. And then I like literally just got on Wikipedia and was like, where am I in the plot? Give me a guide map, someone. But the first half of it is so interesting and compelling to me. And especially the first act of it in the setup and the premise. And like I get that anybody who didn't know that Newt and Hicks were not going to make it out of Aliens 2. If you didn't know that, like if you were expecting the movie to be about them, you would be really mad. I see and respect the people who went through this journey in real time and were really mad about it. I would have been too, but I didn't. That wasn't my experience. I knew that they were going to die in the first 10 seconds of this movie. But I wasn't well acquainted with this sort of setup of what exactly the prison planet is and like the religious themes, which I think are really interesting in here, in the way that the first movie is sort of about like workers for like a corporation and like capitalism is going to kill you because it wants to. And then the second movie is about like the military is going to kill you. And then this movie is like religion's going to kill you. And I'm like, yeah, like, I love all that. Ripley as a character gets to have sex in this movie and go out on her own terms. I love that. Like I just shaved head, give it to me, Sigourney Weaver. Like there's so much about this movie that I was just like, oh, I didn't realize you were cool. Is it my favorite David Fincher movie? Let's talk about it. I don't know, maybe. I'm not here to give a correct take. I'm just here to share my journey. And I like in the middle, it was right around like sort of coming up to the midpoint where the movie had kind of hooked me in its ideas. Not so much in its execution. The effects are really rough and they get rougher as it goes along. But it had really kind of hooked me in its ideas and I could feel myself becoming a little obsessed with this franchise in a way that I haven't been. Like, it's been kind of a tertiary franchise for me, but I started to feel like a James Bond feeling, like burrowing into my heart where I was like, do I need to watch all of these like a lot of times?
Yes.
Maybe.
I love this.
Maybe I do. And maybe Alien 3 is the one that sold me on it. So let's go.
Wow.
Awesome. That is exciting. Okay. Cool. All right. Well, Alex, what about you?
Well, you mentioned people who went into this movie after watching Aliens, and liking the end of Aliens, and then being really mad watching this movie. I was one of those people. I was
Valid.
so angry when I first watched this movie because I had seen Alien and Aliens, and I loved Aliens. I loved the James Cameron-ness of it all and how it was so thematically tight, and it ends in this happy James Cameron place. And it's not a movie that you really should make a sequel to, because it is so conclusive in this nice thematic way. Ripley has kind of completed this journey of reclaiming motherhood after losing her own daughter, which we don't know except for the director's cut. We talked about all that in the other podcast. But yeah, coming to this movie in the first 10 seconds is just so bleak. It's just so goddamn bleak. It's like little girl dead, other guy dead. Like here's the corpse like screaming, like like it's like really almost, to me when I was younger and I saw this, it felt like it was like offensive to the previous movie, which like had made me care so much about these characters. And it was kind of like Fincher's like, fuck you. Here's like the girl that we like cared about the whole movie, like 10 seconds in.
And if you're not sure she's dead, just wait.
Right.
until,
Yeah.
like, 15
Yeah.
minutes in.
We're gonna hear her bones crack and everything. The Alien franchise is a brutal franchise, and it's body horror and yada yada. But I think there's that whiplash coming out of like the most James Cameron-y chapter of it. This is such a 180 from that right off the bat. So this movie has always left a bad taste in my mouth as a movie that seems to kind of just like almost say "fuck you, nothing mattered" from everything that came before in Ripley's journey, and then even thematically here, there are interesting ideas introduced that I was tuning into more as an adult, older person watching it now, but I don't see how they gel or come together by the end, and that's one thing the assembly cut did help a lot for me. Was I felt like there was more time for these supporting characters and kind of a thematic conversation to be had. Whereas in the theatrical cut, I'm like, what is this place? It's a prison planet, but like not really. They're like choosing to still be here because they're religious and they've chosen to be celibate. They're monks. You could feel the like 5 scripts all crammed together. So yeah, I still didn't like it very much watching it now. But the assembly cut I did prefer quite a bit. And part of it was there was kind of just a rhythm to the movie and a feeling like every act had some kind of like coherence and like reversals that were interesting. Whereas, as we've been saying in the theatrical cut, the second half of the movie, I was just like almost like zoned out. I'm like, I don't even know what anybody is, what anything is. And in the assembly cut, there's a whole really interesting subplot with this guy, Gallic is his name.
Yeah.
I thought they were saying garlic, but yeah, Gallic. And like, that's one of the more interesting parts of the whole movie. It's entirely absent from the theatrical cut. So yeah, really interesting to see what the studio thought was worth excising. It's like, leave like you said, Brian, the bad alien stuff in, take out the interesting reversals and character moments with this very large cast of prisoners that we can't distinguish really in the theatrical cut. So yeah, I don't like this movie, but I think there's interesting elements here and ideas that could have been made into a good movie if it wasn't this mess of a production with 5 different scripts.
Hope you enjoyed this preview clip. To continue the conversation and listen to the entire episode, head over to the Beyond the Screenplay Patreon. The link is in the show notes.